You are listening to a Clarkesworld Magazine podcast with your host and narrator, Kate Baker. Greetings, Clarkesworld citizens. I hope this podcast finds you extraordinarily well. This is our third story for the month of January 2022, issue 184. Just a brief check-in. How are those New Year's resolutions going, if you made any? As with mine, as always, I think I've already given up on most of them. But I do hope that they're going well for you. Thank you for supporting this podcast. Whether you do so via a subscription or you check us a few dollars every month on patreon.com/Clarkesworld, your support matters greatly. So our story is titled The 5 Rules of Supernova Surfing, or a for real solution to the Fermi Paradox, bro. It is by Geoffrey W. Cole. Now, Geoffrey W. Cole, who can be found at geoffreywcole.com, is an award-winning short fiction author. His work has appeared in such publications as Apex, New Worlds, Escape Pod, Reckoning, and Imaginarium 2012, the year's best Canadian speculative writing. His stories have been translated into Catalan, French, Hungarian, Italian, Romanian, and Spanish. He is a 2016 winner of the Premis Ictano for Best Story translated into Catalan. He lives with his wonderful wife, 3 sons, and giant hound outside of Toronto, Canada. If you like what you hear, you can go back to Teaching Bigfoot to read. So, my dear listener, I hope that you can sit back, relax, and let me tell you a story. First rule of supernova surfing: timing is everything. A light year out from the dying red supergiant, Reef put on the music. Hundreds of semi-sentient AIs sprang to life at the back of the 2025 VW microbus and began to strum, tickle, blow, and stomp the virtual instruments he had laid out for them. Metallic bossa nova with a thrumming beat flooded the cabin of the simulated camper van that Reef and his best pal, Ka-10-8, called home on the jaunts between stars. Reef fiddled with the dial on the dash of the microbus, adjusting their synced chrono perception, but before he had it quite right, Ka-10-8 jumped out the passenger door. "Hey!" he shouted as Ka-10-8 accelerated ahead of him on their slick monoboard. "I get first ride. That's the deal." Reef dropped the microbus simulation and hit the gas on his swallowtail surfboard. Both he and Ka-10-8 wore chrome versions of their original biological bodies, upgraded with rad shielding, antimatter rockets, enough computing power to run an interstellar economy, and killer sunglasses. "Nah, brah," Ka-10-8 said. "I'm done with you riding first at every break." Ka-10-8 waggled their headstalks in the big oat equivalent of an upraised middle finger as they tried to drop in on Reef. Reflexes kicked him out of Ka-10-8's exhaust plume. The musicians, now playing in a larger corner of Reef's mind, didn't miss a beat. The maneuver cost Ka-10-8 some delta V, and that was enough for Reef to blast past the big oat. Now, the old star was his. Their models figured the red supergiant would go boom in 11 years and 14 days real-time, but real-time was for suckers. Reef, Ka-10-8, and the orchestra had synced their internal chronoperception to run on a sliding scale, averaging 1 second perceived to 1 million real. The 11 years and 14 days until the boom would feel like little more than 5 adrenaline-soaked minutes. "Why so aggro, Kay?" Reef said. "If we can't abide by the rules we set for ourselves, we're no better than a Barney." Reef sucked up reaction mass as he dropped. They would dive in close to the dying star, picked up speed by slingshotting around her, then burn hard on the other side. If you want to catch the shockwave of a supernova, you have to haul ass. "You won on a technicality," Ka-10-8 said. "I've been cool about it long enough, but I'm done. Time I got a first ride." "Hardly a technicality," Reef said. His memory of the day of the wager was a little foggy, he would admit that, but he wasn't about to enter into a parlay now. "Brah, we've got the most gnar of all tubulars ahead of us and a unique piece of oral perfection to ride to. We can sort this out later." "That's just it," Ka-10-8 said. "I don't think we can sort this out later." Before Reef had a chance to ask what they meant, the red supergiant imploded 9 years and 4 months ahead of schedule. The orchestra quit their song as they semi-sentiently realized their fate. Even in real time, it happened fast, and as Reef and Ka-10-8 dropped down to real time to try to deal with the explosion, time ended in a wall of incandescent plasma. Second rule of supernova surfing: back up before your drop. A real-time year later, Reef and Ka-10-8's mines booted from the backups they had left inside a rocky planetoid a few light hours from the boom that went bust. Nanoassemblers worked hard to turn the native rock into the computronium and other advanced materials of which their bodies were made, so they sent a pair of avatars to the Après Lounge to chill until they were ready to hit the road. Closed out again early, didn't it? Reef said. Ka-10-8 grunted as they walked over to the bar. Reef followed. The image of the supernova was the last thing beamed to his waiting backup, and it filled his mind now. A gilded wall of cosmic fury ready to devour him. So harsh. The semi-sentient waiter behind the tiki bar was already working on their standard post-supernova wipeout refreshments. A wafting bowl for Ka-10-8 and a Mai Tai for Reef. After a sip of the perfect beverage, Reef could tolerate the simulated view, where the gaseous filaments of the traitorous supernova remnant expanded above the palm-thatched lanai. "What's that?" Reef said. 3 supernovas in a row that blew before we could hop on? Ka-10-8 held the wafting bowl in the mouth of one head lobe, while sniffing the fumes it released with the other. 9, they said, if I'm counting right. Ka-10-8 wasn't counting right. Reef and Ka-10-8 had successfully surfed thousands of supernovae in their time, but in the past 44 million years, they had attempted to surf 25 supernovae, and all but one of them exploded earlier than their models predicted. "I think we gotta recalibrate our models, broski," Reef said. Ka-10-8 climbed into the saltwater hot tub. "Problem's not with our models," they said. "Problem's with the universe. We've been riding too long." "It's only been a few thousand years," Reef said, climbing into the warm water beside his oldest pal. Though everything in the Après was virtual, the water soothed the artificial aches in his imaginary body. "Have a look out there," Ka-10-8 said. "See any other galaxies?" Reef took off his sunglasses. The view from the Après showed what the sensors they'd left scattered across the surface of the planetoid were seeing. Stars, mostly old red gals, like the one that had recently annihilated them, and a few black holes. But beyond that, nothing. The ever-present billions of other galaxies that usually filled the night sky were gone. In particular, the Lateria, the supergalaxy that had once been the Milky Way that they both called home, was nowhere to be seen. The waters of the tub couldn't do anything about the chill that shivered through them. "Bruh, you're fucking with the Après simulation, right?" "Only fuckery around here is the fact that you've had first rides on false pretenses. The deal was whoever won the competition got first rides for life." "And you bailed on every wave," Reef said. "So I get first rides. I can't believe we're still arguing about this." "Don't quite know what you remember, but it doesn't matter if you bail. I landed a Flintstone flip on a 25-footer. Judges robbed me is what happened. Basing a lifelong wager on crooked judges is a crime, especially for lives as long as ours." "I think you're missing the important part here. The galaxies are gonzo. Might that be why the supernovas are misbehaving?" Ka-10-8 bowed their head lobes in the bigote approximation of a shrug. "All I know is before we run out of supernovas, I want a first ride." Reef sank into the hot tub, still staring up at the empty sky. "Run out, bruh? What are we gonna do?" "I think there's only one thing we can do." The 2 ancient artificial intelligences spoke in unison. "We gotta call Mom." Third rule of supernova surfing: tell someone when you'll be home. Last time Reef checked messages from Mom must have been a couple billion years earlier, because there sure were a lot of them. He'd been sending her updates, mostly memory packs of their most bodacious rides, but hadn't bothered checking her responses in ages. Usually she made little notes like, Looks awesome, hon. Or be careful out there. But the messages that had accumulated recently had a decidedly different tone. The latest, from a couple million years ago, read, "This is the end of the universe, kiddos. Boot me." The note came with a giant data packet that must have been a full copy of dear old Mom. Mom appeared in a long white robe over a body Reef always thought of as elephantish. She didn't have tusks, but the trunk-like appendage that hung off the front of her massive head always made him expect her to trumpet. "It's about damn time," she said as she solidified. "I've been trying to get through to you two for millennia." "Thank Jai you're here, Ma," Reef said. "There's something wrong with the supernovas." "Get in the tub," Ka 10-8 said. "We need you to settle a dispute for us." Mom climbed in, sending a torrent of hot brine sloshing across the polished wood floors. "Neither of you have any idea, do you?" "We haven't caught a break in weeks," Reef said. "Now the galaxies are gonzo." "The day we upraised, Reef, he and I made a bet," Ka 10-8 said. "You gotta help us put this to bed once and for all." "That can wait," Reef said. "Supernovas, Mom? Why are they breaking early?" "Kids," Mom said. "It can't wait," Ka 10-8 said. "I'm done riding your sloppy seconds." "Kids, there aren't going to be any more breaks until we know what's wrong with the stars." "Kids!" Reef and Ka 10-8 shrank back before her intensity. "Sorry, Ma," Ka 10-8 said. "We didn't even ask you about your trip. Or offer you any refreshments." Reef snapped his fingers and the waiter appeared with a tray of green powders. Mom snorted a line, closed her eyes, and settled back into the tub. "When I upraised you both, I gave you brains complex enough to assimilate a planet. Now you're telling me simple astrophysics and remembering the day we upraised Reef are beyond your capabilities?" "Wouldn't call predicting supernovas simple," Reef said into the bubbling brine. "Memory faults can happen to anyone," Ka 10-8 said in the same petulant tone. "You're both still running simulated organic states, aren't you?" "Simulated what now?" Ka 10-8 said. Mom shook her trunk in dismay. "Years before you left what was then called the Milky Way, you both decided that digital cognition was, and I quote, 'too heavy, Betty,' and that you'd programmed your minds to work like your original biological brains. Does that ring a bell?" "In a chowdery way, yeah," Reef said. He had vague memories of having perfect memory. Living with a metal brain was a drag. Everything perfect and crystal clear and awful. Memory of surfing a wave shouldn't be as good as the real thing. "Totes," Reef said. "So we set our brains back to their original specs." Mom pressed her trunk to the top of her head in a gesture of exasperation they both knew well. "How long have you two been out surfing?" "Couple of thousand years," Reef said. 4 billion, Ka 10-8 said. "Max." "It's been over 145 billion years since you left the Milky Way," Mom said. The hot tub burbled and splorkled into the silence that followed Mom's declaration. No, that can't be right," Reef said. "You sure?" Ka 10-8 said. "Top up your refreshments," Mom said. "You're going to need them." The waiter carried over a fresh Mai Tai and wafting bowl. While the two of them imbibed, Mom laid out their fate. They had been chasing supernovae around the universe for years, jumping from galaxy to galaxy to hunt the increasingly rare cosmic phenomenon. Though the trip from one galaxy to the next only felt like 20 minutes of cruising in the microbus, those trips were getting longer and longer, with some journeys taking billions of years between more distant galaxies. Messing about in a galaxy as they traveled from one supernova site to another could take billions of years too, all of which they experienced as a diversion of only a few minutes. "The two of you have been eating time like ham sandwiches." "Easy on the ham talk, Dad," Ka 10-8 said. "We're vegans." "The point is, the universe is out of ham," Mom said, "whether you want to eat it or not." "I'm confused," Reef said. "Is ham a metaphor for supernovas?" Mom trumpeted in frustration. The ham is everything. Time, stars, supernova, you name it. The universe is running out of it. The universe has been expanding the whole time you've been traveling. That's why you can't see any other galaxies. They're just too far away. So the universe got so big, Ka-10-8 said, that it got smaller? Mom took a calming snort. The two of you have been surfing for so long that you can never travel back to Lateria. You are on your own for the end of the universe. She offered her powder tray to Reef and Ka-10-8. They both took a snort. Thankfully, while you two were engaged in pleasant diversions, the best minds in the universe have been working on a solution. Sick, Reef said. So they've got what, like a cosmological reset button we can push or something? Or something, Mom said. Her trunk flickered out of existence for a moment before re-solidifying. Whoa, Ka-10-8 said. You okay, Mom? Her avatar stabilized. Sorry, kids, I didn't send a full self with this message. I'm a little glitchy. That data package was huge, Ka-10-8 said. That's the or something. I'm a single-use mom. Single-use? Reef said. He didn't like the sound of that. But you brought your memories, right? Ka-10-8 said. You can remember our bet? That was the day we adopted Reef, she said. I don't go out for coffee without bringing it along. But before we get to that, we need to talk about the or something, and the two of you need to stop wasting time. She summoned a new Mai Tai and wafting bowl. As we are currently sitting in one, I assume you two understand the idea of fully immersive environmental simulation? Reef and Ka-10-8 flashed shakas. The or something simulates the entire universe. Once you have it up and running, the two of you can upload yourselves to it and continue surfing Supernova to your heart's content. Reef punched in the air in joy, spilling his Mai Tai into the hot tub. Ka-10-8 swung their head lobes in lazy circles. But something Mom had said struck Reef mid-celebration, and he sank into the rhyme. Back up, Ma. These supernovas. They aren't gonna be real. They'll feel as real as your hot tub, she says. Or the or something runs at sub-Fermian fidelity. And that's good, Ka-10-8 said. Kiddos, it's gnarls, Mom said. But before we get into just how gnarly it is, we need to talk about how to run it. The two of you need to find a young, stable red dwarf, park around it, build a brain, hang there for the next 100 trillion years. After that, things get sketchy. Please listen very carefully to this next bit. That's where Reef stopped listening. With the virtual Mai Tais warming up his mind, he dreamed of supernovae. That moment when they erupt behind you, that cloud of hot gas rushing up like the fist of a dying titan, laying on the last of the burn, the impact as the shockwave catches the board, those brief seconds when you're either going to end up as atomized space junk or a golden god. And the ride, a whole new universe full of them. So gnarly, Reef said. I take it that means you understand, Mom said. Reef looked over at Ka-10-8, who also had that glassy look in their eyes. It's all in the readme, right? Mom eyed them from either side of her trunk. So long as you promise to crack the readme the moment you hit the road. We got it, Ma, Ka-10-8 said. Now, enough of this simulation talk. You said you remember the details of our wager. I gotta know what went down that day. Mom settled back into the tub. Sure about that, Lazy K? Part of the heaviness you two wanted to dodge was the day we raised Reef. We're 150 billion years old, Ka-10-8 said. I think we can take it. Mom took a long snort of fluorescing powder. Well, let's go for a ride. 3rd and a half rule of supernova surfing. Expect flashbacks. The sun wasn't even close to exploding. Reef, Ka-10-8, and Mom floated above the rolling blue Pacific Ocean, invisible ghosts haunting their own past. On the water, surfers lined up for the massive waves rolling toward the crowded Ehukai beach of the north shore of Oahu. Total blast from the past, Reef said. This is the pipeline comp, isn't it? 2046, Mom said. We happened to be swinging by when Ka-10-8 heard about the competition. There they are. The Ka-10-8 of 150 billion years ago wore a human body that bobbed on their board in the lineup beside the original Reef. Mom, Ka-10-8 said, how did you let me out looking like that? This was pre-contact, Mom said. You really wanted to enter the comp, so we made you something that would fit in. Now, stick your POVs to those fine young bodies. See if this will jog a memory. Mom pushed Reef and Ka-10-8 into their younger selves, and Reef's perceptions shifted. He floated on the waves in his original body. White zinc sunscreen was smeared across the human Ka-10-8's sunburnt cheeks, and they laughed at something he'd said. You're pretty cocky for a human, Ka-10-8 said. What do you expect in a shark? As Reef's young body said the words, he remembered saying them. I'm expecting to win. Last set of the heat. Gotta give it all on this one. The surfer ahead of Reef dropped onto a massive wave. He was next. Tell you what, Ka-10-8 said. Whoever wins this thing gets first rides next time we ride together. Memory flooded back across 150 billion years. Reef had been so excited to think this rad new writer wanted to surf with him again. Got yourself a deal, bro. Ka-10-8 and Reef bumped fists. Then Reef paddled into the next wave. He was a little late on the drop, and he remembered how disappointed he felt. He was shanking it. The surfer with the dorky zinc on their cheeks would never want to surf with him again. He rode out of the wave and sat down on his board to watch Ka-10-8 surf. Their wave was huge, at least 27 feet, and they dropped no problem, cutting across the wall of ocean as if they'd been born to do it. Then they caught their nose, and it all went wrong. Ka-10-8 fell, arms pinwheeling, and the wave thundered down on top of them. Reef paddled without thinking. He'd been hammered at Ehukai before. The reef was the ocean's open mouth full of coral teeth, and it could chew you to pieces. He ducked under the wash, saw Ka rolling unconscious above the coral, blood seeping from a gash on their head. He wrapped one arm around their chest and hauled them back to the surface. A rescue jet ski towed them back to the beach, where a tall woman in a long white sarong ran to the chop to help with Reef and Ka. Oh, lazy K, Mom said. You all right? Ka-10-8 puked up half the Pacific, then seemed to feel better. This mean I lost the bet? Let's check the scores. 44 surfers had come to Ehukai for the big wave event. Based on their performance that day, the judges had placed Reef 43rd and Ka-10-8 44th, separated only by 1/10 of a point. Reef relived the outrage he'd forgotten long ago. Sure, they'd both had a few rough rides, but to place dead last? Even Mom agreed there had to be some mistake. Tell you what, Reef said. Let's go back to my van, hit the bong, and think this through. There's gotta be something we can do. 12 hours later, Reef and Ka-10-8 were still sitting in his microbus. Dozens of empty beer cans littered the footwells, and 4 pizza boxes, each delivered to the accessible parking space at Ehukai Beach, at various intervals throughout the night, sat empty on the dash. Mom snored on the mattress at the back of the bus. I don't care what anyone says, Reef said, trying to fill the bowl of the bong, but succeeding only in littering his bus with Big Island Kush. You're like one of the top 4 surfers I've ever ridden with. Listen, Reef, Ka-10-8 said, I think you should have first ride next time. Reef shook his head and tried to light the empty bowl. Nah, brah. We both stink. We gotta admit it. Ka-10-8 was trying to stand inside the cramped bus and failing. Forget the comp. Listen, I'm not talking water waves. They rammed their head on the ceiling, cursed, and said, I'm done with this thing. Ka-10-8 unfolded. Their bodies shimmered and separated and reformed, and Reef remembered thinking that the guys in Wailea must have added something special to his ganja because there was an alien in the bus beside him. Ka-10-8 was a stout quadruped covered in fur, the color and consistency of a golden doodles. 2 lobes about the size and shape of a hindarm protruded from their top of their barrel-shaped body, each with a smear of zinc above a wide slit Reef supposed was a nose, each with a shiny black membrane that might have been an eye, and each with a gummy-toothed opening that was definitely a mouth. 4 legs protruded straight out from the sides of their body, reminding Reef of a crab. "Awesome," was all Reef could muster. "Feelings mutual, bro," Ka-10-8 said. "That's why I want you to come with me." "Come with you where? To, like, the stars and such?" They extended one head lobe to Reef. "You in?" 4th rule of Supernova surfing. Make a contingency plan. Reef toweled the hot brine off his simulated body. He didn't need the heat of the hot tub. An old warmth filled him from the memory Mom shared. "You in?" Ka-10-8 said. Reef had forgotten how happy those words had made him. "I've been thinking, bro," he said, turning to Ka-10-8, who was sitting on the edge of the tub, head lobes rubbing together in thought. "Contest? The wager, that is? Wasn't fair. You weren't in your true bod. The results shouldn't stand." Ka-10-8 stepped out of the tub and shook themselves dry. "Nah, I had it wrong, though. First ride should be yours. You saved my life." "Any bro would have done the same." "As much as I hate to interrupt this heartwarming reconciliation," Mom said, sheets of brine sluicing off her into the floor of the après, "you two need to get moving. I took the liberty of accelerating our synced chronoperception while we were tripping, and your new bodies are now ready for interstellar travel. Can we please take this to the hangar?" In a blink, they appeared at the base of the shaft they had cut into the surface of the planetoid. Their chrome bodies gleamed lifeless and perfect in the darkness of the cavern. Reef and Ka-10-8 stepped into their respective cells, but Mom stayed behind, a simulated figment on the polished stone. "You sure you can't ride with us, Mom?" Ka-10-8 said. She shook her trunk in dismay. "You'll need all the processing power you can muster to run the or something." She kissed them both with the tip of her trunk. "Now, get moving. And don't make any unnecessary stops. The or something will take time to get up and running, and time is no longer an asset you can waste." They blew kisses as they started their antimatter reactors. "Love you, Mom," Reef said. "Thanks for everything." They shot out of the planetoid, twin bullets fired from a world-sized gun. Once the planetoid was but a small speck in the rear view behind them, Reef and Ka-10-8 appeared in the simulated VW microbus. Both pretended they hadn't been crying. The stable red mega-giant Mom had pointed them to was only a few light years away. At their current Delta V, they'd be in there in just over 25,000 years. So Reef adjusted the chronoperception dial to 1 billion to 1, turning the transit into a cool 13 minutes. Reef summoned another semi-sentient orchestra, but the music wasn't working for him. All these years he'd been shoving in front of Ka-10-8 at every ride, but only now did he realize he might have been shoving them away. As Reef watched the old and dying stars go by, one of the subroutines always running in the back of his vast yet dim mind drew a shining yellow pentagram around a nearby star. It wasn't that far off course, and would only add a couple 100 kiloyears to their journey. He adjusted the chronoperception dial to bring them down to parity. "See what I'm seeing, Ka?" he said. "Seeing it, brah, but Mom said we gotta get to the or something and set up pronto." Real seconds ticked away between them. Makes me kind of sick to think of how I've been hogging first rides for so long. Gotta make it right before we start this new thing. "Bro, it's okay. I owe it to you. I should have been happy every time you caught a break ahead of me." Reef cut off the music. "You don't owe me anything, Ka. You gave me this life, and through it all, you've been the best partner any dude could have ever hoped for. I lost sight of that. I want you to have the last real first ride of our lives." "That's like the super raddest thing you've ever said to me, but I really think we should heed Mom's advice, bro. 400,000 real-time years, that's all we're talking about. Come on, Ka. We'll even simulate judges for it like the Ehukai Big Wave Comp. A proper do-over. Then we unfold the or something. It's a deal, bro. Let's shred. Reef changed course while Ka 10-8 spun the chronoperception dial, and soon they were burning for the dying star. 2 light years away, it exploded. Ka 10-8 wanted to burn for the next red megagiant to set up the or something, but Reef found another star that was ready to go nova. This star was a little farther, almost 200,000 light years away on the other side of the galaxy. And they didn't have the speed boost from the soup, so it would take a while to get there. One last ride, Reef said. One last ride. Reef summoned a digital bong, and the 2 of them passed it back and forth as they made the transit. Halfway to their next target, it too went boom ahead of schedule. But Reef already had several more likely targets picked out, and Ka 10-8, a little bleary from the simulated dope, again agreed. The universe darkened as they cut across their terminal galaxy. Stars winked out without going nova, others exploded without warning. The distances between stars grew longer as the universe kept expanding, so Reef kept spinning the dial until they were cruising through 1 trillion years an hour. They got close enough to one supernova to climb out of the bus, but it blew a little late and barely accelerated them at 1G. They dodged black holes and dim stellar remnants and discarded planets long ago tossed away by their parent stars, a sensation like skiing slalom at the rate they perceived their transit. Reef kept packing the simulated bong with primo post-human kush along the way. 100 trillion years later, Reef picked another target. I have a good feeling about this one, he said. Bro, Ka 10-8 said, staring at a few other distant and dim points of light. There are only like 9 other stars left. Think it's time to get out to the or something. This is for real, the last one. Go with this good feeling, Kay, please. Ka 10-8 let out the whistling big oat equivalent of a sigh. Reef pointed the bus toward the dying star and hit the gas. As they shot across the darkening void, the other 9 stars winked out in the time it took Reef to open a bag of plantain chips. Ka 10-8 pressed their head lobes together in horror. Reef felt his simulated digestive tract turn to water. The only star left in the sky hung before them, a brilliant, unstable giant. Before either of them could reach for the dial, it popped. No, Ka 10-8 said. It's okay, bro, Reef said. We'll consult the README. Mom said everything we needed was in there. Mom said we had to set up the or something right away. We just ate 100 trillion years for nothing. Hey, we both agreed it was a good idea. Ka 10-8 threw the bong at Reef. Stinking water soaked his tank top and board shorts and dripped in grimy streaks down his sunglasses. Good idea, Ka 10-8 said. Never mind supernovas, Reef. We missed out on everything. Ka 10-8 went rigid beside Reef. He tried to nudge them awake and shouted in concern at their apparent comatoseness. And when they still didn't answer, he dropped the microbus simulation and stared across the cold, dark vacuum to find his best friend floating chrome and unresponsive in the lightless universe. 5th rule of supernova surfing: never surf alone. Every transmission Reef sent bounced off of Ka 10-8's chrome skin unanswered. He summoned a suite of diagnostic subroutines that confirmed his worst fears. Ka 10-8 was running on their own time, and they weren't broadcasting a sync key. Ka 10-8 had shut him out. As Reef reeled from the realization, Ka 10-8 made a few course corrections. All he could do was follow, always a few beats behind. They flew away from the dimming supernova remnant. Black holes and brown dwarfs loomed where there had once been light. Here and there a flare of intense gamma lit up the darkness, but otherwise it was the ocean on a clouded night. A very old part of Reef's brain couldn't help thinking there might be sharks circling below. Ka-10-8 landed on a rocky planetoid that was cruising through the void. Reef had to circle back to make orbit around the cold rock, and by then, Ka-10-8 was pushing the planetoid across the void toward a nearby black hole. During the transit, the planetoid began to change. Ka-10-8's body spread across the surface, turning the dull rock into computronium. It took ages, but they had ages. Reef flipped through an old surf magazine while keeping an eye on the changes through the windshield of the microbus. An hour and several million years later, the rock shed layers as it entered orbit around the black hole, like an abandoned wasp nest disintegrating in a hurricane. At first, Reef thought the black hole was doing the ripping, but that wasn't the case. Ka-10-8 was pushing all those little flecks of smart rock into a specific orbit. Soon, the original rock was gone, dispersed into a great cloud around the black hole, and to Reef's horror, so was Ka-10-8. Ka! Reef broadcast from his orbital position, an AU further out. Please, don't leave me all alone out here. The answering signal was a life preserver. He clung to it and accepted Ka-10-8's request to join him in the simulated microbus. Geez, bro, Ka-10-8 said as they materialized in the passenger seat. It's been several 100 million years. Couldn't you have cleaned up the place? Empty bags of plantain chips and discarded beer cans filled the passenger footwell. Digital dope haze hung in the air so thick it could start raining THC at any moment. I don't do so well without you, Reef said. So, summon a shrink. That's what I did. And a yoga instructor. Did some sensory deprivation. 1,000-year silent retreat. Read the big old book of living and dying for dummies a few times. A little self-improvement before moving into the new universe. How have you been using your last increments of this reality? Reef held up a surf magazine. I read about half of this. Then he dropped it and buried his head in his hands. Who am I kidding? I only looked at the pictures. The tears caught him off guard. He laid his head on the leather-tasseled steering wheel and bawled. So you haven't started working on your own or something? Reef pointed to the surf magazine. Just the picture. He tore open a bag of plantain chips, hesitated a moment, then offered them to Ka-10-8. They're the spicy kind. They refused, so Reef left the open bag in the console. Well, if you had, Ka-10-8 said, you might be able to help figure out what to do with it. Could you, give me the laid man's version? Ka-10-8 tried to explain it to him. The or something was designed to be powered by the entire energetic output of a stable star. With that kind of power, it could run a snappy universe simulation down to what Mom had called sub-Fermian resolution. But all they had the power to simulate was a black hole. Though the energetic output of the supermassive black hole at the center of their dying galaxy was significant, building a structure in its orbit would be too difficult, so they had to settle for a smaller, less energetic black hole. It still put out a good deal of energy in the form of X-rays, infrared light, and heat, but it didn't compare to the energy output of a star. It's like trying to roast a veggie dog over a single match instead of a barbecue, Ka-10-8 said. Oh, that would take forever, Reef said. Exactly. Simulating 1 second of sub-Fermian resolution universe using a black hole as the power source will take years of real-time processing power. At Reef's blank expression, Ka-10-8 said, the point is, we can't go as high resolution if we want the simulation to last for a good long time. You gotta scale back, Ka-10-8 said. So do I. When you get your or something up and running, you have to decide what to leave and what to keep. Reef reached across the microbus and put a hand on each of Ka-10-8's head lobes. Ka, I don't want another universe if it doesn't have you in it. They blinked in surprise at this, then shrugged him off. Spent a lot of the last few million years talking to my yoga instructor about you, about how we've been living. I know we chose BioBrains because neither of us wanted to remember the fact that we came in last at Ehukai, but you ever think it was more than that? Reef settled back into a seat. I still don't want to remember it. In fact, I kind of forgot again. We've been cruising through life, leaving all our troubles in the ashes of the last supernova, and getting high on the road to the next wave. It's not really living, Reef. Says who? Reef said. Your semi-sentient yoga instructor? There's nothing wrong with what we've been doing. I should have let you ride first every now and then. I know that now, but that don't mean we have to toss the baby out with a bathtub. I cherish every moment we've had together, whether in the van, the après, or out there on the waves. All I ever wanted was the next moment, and deep down, I think that's all you wanted too. Ka 10-8 sat in stunned silence across from him. Reef offered the bag of plantain chips again, and this time Ka took a mouthful. These are spicy. New Universe might not have plantain chips this good. So ditch them, Reef said. Supernovas to shred. Some good liquid waves. Mountains with snow. Doesn't have to be water snow, though. I am partial to it. Gas giants for sailing. You. Ka 10-8 rubbed their head lobes together. In the après, I suppose, and maybe some place to get our boards waxed. Simulating all the life in the universe has got to hog resources. Cut it too. Ka 10-8 closed their eyes and seemed to be thinking. Could work, but it'll be awful lonely. Reef knelt in the empty beer cans and crinkling plantain chip packages that filled the driver's footwell. Not if we're together. You, me, and a universe to shred. That's all we need. What about first rides? All yours. They take another mouthful. Nope, we do the contest again, but this time I ride in my own body. Reef crawled up out of the footwell. So we simulate Earth, show up for the 2046 pipeline comp. Winner gets first rides. We shut it down after if we need the bandwidth. Got yourself a deal, bro. Ka 10-8 leaned in. Reef bumped their head lobe with his fist. Minutes and millions of years later, they surfed the wavefront of a big bang as it defined their new universe. You can leave a comment at the newly designed Clarkesworld Magazine website. That's clarkesworldmagazine.com, and that is Clark with an E. I can be found over at Kate_Baker on Twitter. Neil is at Clarkesworld. And again, I want to thank you for your support. Thank you for all of the tweets, all of the emails, and all of the general nice things you do for us. We like to do them back. With that, there are more stories yet to come for the month remaining. I do hope you come back and listen, should you so choose. And until then, my dear listener, I hope you are well, and I bid you a very fond and hopefully very temporary farewell.